It was almost 20 years ago, on August the 2nd, 2000, at 8:56 p.m., that I landed for the first time on American soil at Chicago O'Hare Airport on a direct flight from Warsaw. I'm having a hard time imagining that I have been and have lived in this country for almost 20 years. It wasn't until a few years later that I had a chance to visit the Statue of Liberty in the New York Harbor. As I was sightseeing inside, I noticed the famous now sonnet by Emma Lazarus called The New Colossus. In that sonnet, it reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Like so many other immigrants in the history of this great country, I count myself among those tired, poor, huddled masses. Like the millions upon millions of immigrants whose first sight of the New World was that Lady Liberty, I count myself blessed to be able to live in this very land. And yet, I also realize that we continue to fall short of these words from Emma Lazarus' sonnet. For her words are so close to the ones from today's gospel. Like the Lady Liberty, Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. Come to me, all you tired, poor, huddled masses." It's amazing that this very lofty ideal is proclaimed today in all Catholic churches on this Independence Day weekend. Almost the same words that the Statue of Liberty reminded and continue to remind all of us. Tired, poor, huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. This ideal of ours is something that we continue to reach for, something that our founding fathers and mothers, even though so imperfect and sinful in their own record, set up for all of us. On one hand, we yearn to be that place, to be that country where the tired, poor, huddled masses will find justice and equality that truly is for all. On the other hand, we realize that this ideal is yet to be truly fulfilled, so that one day all Americans, all people who reach the shores of this land can enjoy the ideal that we all strive for. You see, that's the problem with ideals. They are always seeming to be almost within our reach, but not just yet. But just because we are not there yet, it doesn't mean that we should give up on them. Just because we are not there yet doesn't mean that we should become cynical and say, oh, what the heck. It is what it is, life is not perfect. But the very idea of this country was to make life better, not for some, but for all. In a similar way, we can speak of the ideals of the Church. Catholic Church and many other Christian churches speak in a very lofty way of what we are called and meant to be. And just like the civil society, as Christians, as Catholics, we keep falling short of living out those lofty ideals. You see, when I was growing up as a child and teenager in Poland under a communist regime, for me the church was what I call the Noah's Ark. Because at that time, in the 80s, in most formative years of my life, when we all lived under a heavy boot of the communist regime, the party, the only party, controlled every single part of our life. You see, the regime told us what movies we can watch. The regime told us what music we can listen to. The regime told us what books were allowed to be read. And even in the newspapers, day after day, you would find blocked out paragraphs because the censorship did not appreciate what the author was writing. The theaters and the operas could not produce any play or drama they wanted, for even the arts were controlled by the state. The schools and the universities could not teach all sciences and all conclusions of the sciences, only those that the regime would allow to be taught. And in this very Orwellian life, church was the only space where we could be truly free. The priests were the only people who were not afraid to speak truth. Priests were the only people who were not censored in their sermons. We would go to church to watch forbidden movies. We would produce plays in our youth group that otherwise would not be seen in a regime-controlled theaters. What the heck, we even listened to the Beatles in the church because it was a dirty Western music, not allowed to be played on public radio. So, as a young, impressionable boy and then teenager, I looked at the church as the Noah's Ark. I wanted to be a part of that space of freedom, of that uncensored experience. The church was the only beacon in the environment of Poland in the 1980s. Unfortunately, when the political changes took place, some of the Polish bishops got entangled with the political movements and parties, and slowly but surely the Catholic Church in Poland has lost its credibility and attraction as the space of liberation and freedom for all. But just because these ideals are not fully lived in the church, it does not mean that we should give up on them. Because ideals is something that should continue to inspire us. Even though we may understand that we are not there yet as a country, as a society, as a church, we keep picturing ourselves as a better nation, as a better church. The same can be said of our families. Who can say that your family is perfect? One at a time, please. And yet, even though these families of ours are so imperfect, so broken and wounded, we keep imagining them as being the space where everyone can be accepted, loved, and cherished. Has it happened yet? Not fully, but it should not stop us from trying. It should not stop us from trying to be better angels as a country, as a city, as a church, as your family. Just because we are not perfect, just because our ideals seem so lofty and sometimes impossible to be implemented, it does not mean that we should give up on them. This Independence Day weekend and every day of our life. I encourage all of you, do not give up on your ideals. Amen.